pandemic got us into a reflective space and made us look inward to see what we can do for the world at large. As a self-expression coach, I became a catalyst for women and started Vani, a one-on-one coaching program for women on finding their voice, to speak up, to be visible. As a storyteller, I spotted there were many ordinary people amongst us leading extraordinary lives, making a difference to the world, and they needed to be heard. Thus was born You and I with Rashmi Shetty, where amazing personal journeys with their uniqueness and individuality are showcased, a reaffirmation of the fact: open your eyes wider. The world is far more beautiful when we acknowledge the presence of both you and I. Our guest today is a growth mindset, wellness, and parenting coach, all rolled in one. RamG Vallath is the happiest person he has ever met in his life. He wears many interesting hats. He's a tech company co-founder, a much sought-after keynote speaker, and the author of best-selling books From Ouch to Oops and Active Parenting. RamG completed his BTech in IIT Madras and an MBA from XLRI and went on to build a very successful corporate career. However, he was crippled by an autoimmune disorder and had to reboot his life. Today, his aim in life is to touch 1 million lives positively. Listen in as he shares how he overcame all challenges life threw at him and the power of taking charge of your life. Hi RamG, such a pleasure having you on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Heard a lot about you, and now I'm curious to know what your journey was like from little RamG to the RamG Vallath that the world knows today. So can you take us through your journey?
Well, I've had a very interesting life overall, and my little RamG life was also extremely interesting. It was spent mostly in very rural Kerala. I was brought up in villages in Kerala and studied in Malayalam medium government schools all the way till my 10th grade. So learned everything that I know in physics, chemistry, mathematics in Malayalam. Even English actually was taught in Malayalam. Okay, so but fortunately, I had parents who were very focused on what I call active parenting. So they were very helpful, very nurturant. They gave us a lot of opportunities to learn. And I think that is what really helped me even when I had to prepare for my entrance exams and get into IIT, etc. It was that ability to fend for ourselves, which they inculcated in us, which really helped us. So my brother and I, both of us studied in these kind of schools. And there were 3-4 very interesting things that happened in our lives. One is that because we were in all these rural locations, there were not too many friends around, and we had to sort of figure out ways of making ourselves really entertained. And that included reading tons and tons of books. In those days, we could read only in Malayalam. So we had many books which are classics from across the world, which we read in Malayalam. Lots of mythology, lots of classics. And my parents would actually tell us a lot of stories also. In fact, my father used to take the trouble to, once in a couple of weeks, he would actually, we have this ritual, we would all sit together and he would take a PG Wado's book and he would translate one story to us word by word without losing the sense of humor. So PG Wado's, obviously, it's all situational sense of humor. He would not lose that and he would translate it to us. I think later on in my life, the sense of humor really came to my aid. And I think a lot of it was because of those rituals, you know, the love for PG Wado's. Because later on in life, I started reading PG Wado's myself, and that really helped. The other thing that helped was because we were in these kind of places and we had to really figure out ways of entertaining ourselves. So we invented a lot of games ourselves. We had imaginary heroes, imaginary villains. We built rafts to go across the pond, which we had. We used to climb trees and then try to build tree houses. My father actually bought us a carpentry set. So we would actually try to build miniature tables and chairs. So it was all about lots of experiential stuff. And experiential stuff actually makes you very good at problem solving. Later on, when I went through a series of setbacks, it was these problem solving skills which came to my aid. So the sense of humor and problem solving skills, both I attribute to my parents. And the third thing was, my father was very clear that neither of us, even though we were studying in Malayalam medium government schools, pass percentage in my school was 20%, by the way. So out of 100 people who wrote the SSLC, there's a 10th board exam, only about 20% actually graduated. In spite of that, he would not give us any external tuition. He wanted us to be able to solve our own problems ourselves, handle our own lives ourselves. And that really helped me in getting into IIT with a rank of 129 out of 3 lakh people who wrote the exam. Personally, but I was a bit of a dreamer. I would wander around in the garden, in the back fields. I would lie around looking at the sky. Suddenly, one interesting poem would pop into my head. I would go running back home and then write it down. And that's basically maybe how my authoring days really started. So yeah, life was really interesting as a child.
Oh my God, you make it sound so simple. 129 in the IIT entrance exam is not a joke. And that too for somebody who studied in a Malayalam medium. So what would you like to tell parents and children of today who aspire to get into the IITs? And which IIT did you study in?
So I studied in IIT Madras. I did my electronics there. What do I tell aspiring parents? I think there are 2-3 things that they need to do. Number one is create a sense of purpose in your children. And then let them handle their own lives. Do not put too many crutches for them. Do not have multiple tuitions and keep pressurizing them, asking them, when did you study? And sit with them and study. Those kind of things are actually crippling your child. So create a sense of purpose. And for that, you can use lots of storytelling. And so there's so many ways you can actually create a sense of purpose. By the way, my book, Active Parenting, has all that. Huh? So
okay, good.
Always
so
a sales guy, by the way.
Parenting. Sorry.
Always a sales guy.
Very, very important. Okay, you're telling parents now that they should have a sense of purpose, but what was yours to get into the IIT?
Yeah, so my father had done this thing about putting us into Malayalam medium schools against a lot of advice from a lot of relatives. And he wanted us to be, first of all, grounded. He wanted us to understand the real India. So my best friend was a bus driver's son, and another one was a landless farmer's son. Children in my school would actually walk 7-8 kilometers through hilly terrain, carrying 2 paper-wrapped packets of rice, one for breakfast, one for lunch. Dhoti was the uniform, and chappals if you could afford to wear it. Right? And only about 20% of the people could afford to wear it. So that is the kind of a school I studied in, right? So that is what my father wanted to do, number one. Number two, he felt that if you study the basics in your own mother tongue, it actually becomes better for you. You absorb the content better. And I think that really helped them, by the way. Yeah. So when he did that, and he kept telling us that, I have done this against so much of opposition. So many people had said, don't do this. And I believe in you guys. And he reiterated so many times that he believes in us. And that trust that he actually gave to us, that trust actually made us have a sense of purpose that whatever happens, we will make sure that we will not let our parents down. So that's how he inculcated sense of purpose. He also used to tell us, both of my parents actually, they used to tell us a lot of stories of people who had achieved very difficult tasks by hard work, dint of hard work. So that again helps in imparting a lot of sense of purpose.
Oh, okay. So when it comes to a school like IIT, it's aspirational for a lot of children who sit down to write those exams. And the beauty of getting into such institutions is the network you build and the atmosphere in these places. So I studied completely in Chennai, so I know what the haloed portals of IIT Madras are all about. And just passing by the gate of it, you can just sense the beauty of that campus. And IIT has a different aura to it. So, what was your experience and what did you bring out with yourself when you finished your engineering?
The nice fairy tale sort of ends when I got into IIT, by the way. I was always one to sort of push the boundaries a little bit. And I pushed the boundaries quite a bit in IIT. So first of all, I mean, I couldn't speak in English. So I could speak only in Malayalam. And in the first couple of months, I used to stick around only with a Malayali friend. Very luckily, I was ragged by a senior and told, what's wrong with you? Start mingling with others. And so it took me a little bit of an effort to push myself out of my comfort zone and start speaking in English with a lot of people. See, what happens typically is that you have such an inferiority complex that you have not spoken in English, that you tell yourself that, hey, I'm a Malayali and Malayalam is great. Why should I speak in English? And, so you have this pseudo superiority complex which you create for yourself. So I had that. And anyway, Malayalis are great in socialistic people against imperial tyranny. So why should we learn the language of the imperialists, all that nonsense? So that's what happened actually for me. But thanks to this person who ragged me very badly, I started mingling with a lot more people. And my perspective obviously widened a lot. And I started making lots of friends. A little too many friends, because after that, and I keep saying, my entire endeavor became very spiritual. And Old Monk Rum and Bullet Beer became my favorite friends. So my grades started tanking, starting with 8.4 in the first semester, went to 8, then 7.5, then 7, then 6.5, then 6. And finally, it bottomed out at about 5.5. And by the time I had lost total interest in the subject, and I was nearly chucked out of IIT. So it was just, so close to being thrown out. Very luckily, this is, I think, the smartest thing I did. Actually, I keep saying that IIT Madras had a lot of monkeys, and I was one of them. I mean, actually there are monkeys, right, on campus.
With so many trees, it's not a surprise.
I was the only monkey without a tail. So, but I have a tail to tell. So I went and confessed to my parents about everything that happened, and including all my bad habits and how arrogantly I had treated my professors, all that. And my father, with a lot of humility, he came and met a lot of my professors and asked them to support me. I think that sort of turned around my life. And I managed to graduate from IIT in 5 years instead of 4 years. So it was a setback. But on hindsight, I think going through a crucible like that at such a young age, that really helped me learn to cope with downfalls or setbacks. Today, nothing phases me, right? I've gone through so many setbacks in life, and I'm able to happily smile through it and go forward. I think it's because I learned it so early in life.
Yeah. Today's parents, one thing in the parenting is we make sure that the child is secure and safe and doesn't have any falls. But having been through that in a very impressionable age, especially from the 17 to the 21 age band, that bandwidth has a lot of stories that we carry forward in our life. So, what did it make you? One, definitely better in English, but apart from that, what did it tell you about life itself when you finally left IIT?
So many life lessons. Huh? I think the most important one was that you need to take ownership for yourself. And it is very easy to deviate from your path and then completely get lost unless you very carefully guard yourself against that. That is one. Number two was that later on I learned, and this is not at that moment, but that life is a very long innings, right? And you can be completely down in the dumps one day, and then you can just pick yourself and grow. For me, I changed my entire career after IIT, moved into management at XLRI, and that sort of completely reinvented my life. So that is the first time I reinvented my life, and first of several such instances. This was the biggest learning, was that you need to completely own your life. There is nobody else who can help you except yourself. There's nobody else who can destroy you except yourself.
So how did ownership of your life and the thought behind it help you move forward? Immediately you joined XLRI, or you had a work experience before you picked XLRI?
It was very difficult for me to get a job with my kind of grade point average. So I had to go immediately and do my MBA. So I did. I did my MBA immediately after that. Yeah.
Okay. And what did XLRI teach you post IIT and understanding that ownership? So you did very well in XLRI because now you owned your life?
Well, what I learned in XLRI was that deep friendships matter. And I created a lot of very, very close and good friends who stood with me through thick and thin all my life. And that is tremendous. So that is one big learning. The other thing, what I did really well, I was very good at quantity stuff, right? I'm an IIT, and so mathematics was very easy for me. So there were several of my classmates who had come from arts background or non-quantity background. And in an MBA, you have to have a couple of quantity courses and you need to take those. Many of them found it very difficult. And what started off as helping a few friends then suddenly became everybody started coming to me for help. And I was happy because I could contribute to their lives. I could actually add value. I would actually, before quizzes or final exams or midterm exams, I would actually hold classes for my classmates. And it used to be packed because people are so scared about these courses. They all wanted some input and help. And I remember the 2-3 days before the exam, I wouldn't have ability to sleep because there would be people coming to me continuously for support. I would actually sleep for 3-4 hours maximum in those nights, to the extent that sometimes my exam got messed up because I was like completely groggy and sleepy when I would go in for the exam. But I think on hindsight, I'm so happy I did that, because that is when I really realized how important it was to touch people's lives positively, help people. And that's the way it started for me, actually, that journey.
Okay. And then post XLRI?
I became a very different person. The person who was enjoying life and going around, that changed when I joined Titan as my first company. In fact, the first year of Titan, I was still fairly like that. Maximize happiness, hedonism, right? But then I joined a sales role after that. And there was a number target ahead of me. And that was like a red flag to a bull, right? So I went after it like crazy. And I found for the first time the pleasure of meeting a goal and exceeding it. That drove me like crazy. And I did well in Titan. Then I moved a couple of jobs after 6 years in Titan. I became very ambitious, actually. I wanted to be as rich as possible, as young as possible. That was my ambition. And I was actually there. So at the age of, I was in Titan for 5.5 years, and Titan was not a very high paying company. In fact, it was one of the lowest paying companies, which is fine because it had a lot of other things going for it. But in 2 years after that, I became one of the highest paid persons in my batch because my salary went up 10x in 2.5 years. So I really managed to get towards my ambition of becoming very rich, very young. And then I started my career in Airtel, where I joined as a general manager sales, learned through a lot of mistakes how not to do your job, and then learned from that and turned around. And I became extremely successful because I started not looking at adding value to my own self, but how to add value to the organization. That is a big shift for me. So till then, it was about how to make more money, how to reach the next level, how to become the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And then suddenly the thing flipped and I started looking at how to add maximum value to the organization.
What created
So I messed up very badly in the first year. I did not coordinate well. I was a very senior person in the organization as general manager sales. I was the senior most in the first line of the chief operating officer. And it was my responsibility maybe to have reached out to other functional heads and found out what is lacking, what is going well. And in telecom operation, unless all the functions come together, you will not have a happy customer who will stay with you and produce revenue for you and continue on in the network. So the network has to be good. The billing process has to be good. The activation of the process has to be good. The complaint resolving mechanism has to be great. So, and the collection mechanism has to be in place. If you don't have any of these and you just go and sell activations, which is my job, what happens is at the end of the day, you have a lot of customers who are unhappy and who will not pay, and then you will have to write off a lot of revenue. And that happened in my case. I held myself responsible, luckily, for that. And I realized that the buck stops with me in anything. And I need to take care of this entire thing. I need to look at the value of the organization. And I had a great boss then who sort of guided me through that aspect. And I learned that I can't just look at my own role in silo. I need to look at the larger picture, maximize the value for the organization. That happened. And that made me the youngest, I think maybe the youngest, chief operating officer in the telecom industry in the country at the age of 34.
Okay. So here is this little boy who started off in Kerala, a true blue Malayali who comes to Chennai, is shaken and learns a lot of life lessons before he steps out of the IIT campus, gets into an MBA, starts off well, reaches his first goal of making money, then moves to Airtel, where he understands the power of togetherness or the team and reaches the top there as well at 34. And then what did you want from life now? Life gave you everything you aspired.
So I continued to be very ambitious and I wanted to be, I had a very clear target at that time. Global CEO of a Fortune 500 company before 45. Okay. So 11 years to go. 34, I was chief operating officer in a telecom circle. And 11 years seemed to be enough time to actually acquire whatever skills required and grow to that level. Unfortunately, that's when the biggest challenge in my life started, which is an autoimmune condition, which manifested itself as a tremor in my fingers and a slight loss of balance. Many doctors couldn't diagnose what is the problem. There were some misdiagnoses in between. And I had to struggle with that for about 7 years. Those 7 years were hell, actually, because first of all, you don't know what's wrong with you. So you don't know whether you should tell in your organization that you are going through this. Only yourself and your wife knows that you're going through this struggle. And she had to actually, she had a very good job. In fact, she was earning more than me actually before in the first few years. And she's my junior from XLRI. She quit her job because anyway, that time we also had our second kid. So she thought it'd be a good idea to stay at home for some time. She had quit her job. We had moved to Coimbatore because that was where the Airtel Tamil Nadu circle was based out of. And then this problem started. And I was wondering, is there some serious problem? And my wife's mother had passed away from motor neuron disorder. And motor neuron disorder had the same symptoms as what I was going through. And MND, once you get it, it's a very quick and accelerated progress towards death. And we were worried whether I had that. And we wanted her to get back to work, because at least somebody had to look after the kids. So there was a lot of pressure and tension and stress in life at that point in time. But luckily, I managed to move to another city and got a job in Delhi, where then she could actually look for a job which was suitable for her. And she managed to get a job in Google. That sort of helped us in terms of bringing down the stress levels. And then, of course, the condition kept getting worse. And it took a long time. It took 7 years for the diagnosis to finally happen. By the time I had become almost a physical wreck. I could barely climb up steps. I could not walk straight. I would trip and fall. I couldn't stand in one place without swaying. I couldn't hold things properly with my hands. My fingers had lost their strength and ability to hold things. So there are so many issues I was grappling with by the time I was 41. So from wanting to climb into the boardroom of a Fortune 500 company, suddenly life became, can I climb up one step without falling?
Okay. And then what did you tell yourself? How did you handle the situation? What was your attitude at that point of time to life?
The best thing, as I told you earlier, is I had learned how to go through tough situations in life. I had a great sense of humor, which came to my aid all the time. And I never took myself too seriously as a person, right? I would, even though I was ambitious, I had the ability to laugh at myself and make light of situations. So I told myself that I'm going to be a positive guy, and any room I walk into should feel a little more positive because I'm in that room. By the time I was on a crutch and I could barely walk. And in fact, what happened is at the age of 41, I had a fever, and the fever completely spiked the condition. The condition became so bad that I was totally paralyzed. I couldn't move my fingers or my feet even 1 centimeter. I couldn't keep my eyelids open, all those, and then I was wheeled into the hospital, and then they figured out that it was the autoimmune condition. That's when they actually diagnosed the condition. And they put me through medications which did not work properly. So I was constantly tripping and falling, and I was put on steroids, which made me put on so much weight. I put on about 16 kilos. So keeping my sense of humor intact was tough. But two things I did. One is this, I would actually make light of situations and try to find humor in things, make people laugh around me, and that would reflect back on me. I would feel better. I would feel more positive. The other thing I did was I really plunged myself into work also. So I took on a lot of additional responsibilities. I was director of operations for HP at that time, India, director of operations India for HP. And then I took on additional responsibilities for project management for the group. And I took on additional responsibility for Six Sigma and quality. All these together, the idea was that the more I felt I was contributing, the less I would think, oh God, what am I going through?
What was your condition called? And secondly, how are you able to do all this? You said you had so many problems and challenges in everyday movement. How did you manage to climb up the ladder and take on additional responsibilities? What shifted in you to be successful there?
I think the training I had as a child about solving my own problems and taking responsibility for myself, I think that really helped. So because I realized that there is no point actually looking and sitting and crying and moaning about what's going wrong. What I have to do is to have positive action. So towards doing positive things, and that would keep the mind occupied in a positive way rather than in a negative sense, right? It would have been very easy to sort of give up or very easy to have got into this trip of, oh God, life is so unfair. Why is this happening to me, etc. I had so many things going for me, right? And I had a fantastic background. I had an IIT graduation, MBA. I had a great job. I had a wonderful wife. I had two wonderful children. I had parents who were supporting me. My brother was there. There was a circle of great things around me. I should focus on that rather than on why is everything going wrong. That helped a lot. So the condition was called chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, CIDP, and that's what it's called. Immune system attacks the peripheral nerves of the body, thinking it's an intruder into the body, and that causes the destruction of what is called a myelin sheath on the nerves, and that in turn ensures that your nerve impulses do not go to the peripheral muscles. So what happens is when muscles are not used for a period of time, they waste away. So I had lost most of the muscles in my palms, most of the muscles in my feet, and many of the muscles in my arms and legs. That was a condition at that point in time. So yeah, that was possibly the worst time in my life. Luckily, I managed to keep my sanity. And I also wanted to be the cheerleader in my home. I never wanted my children to think that when you're hit with a difficulty, you should just fall down and cry. When you go through difficulties is when you rise up and then you take it on and say you bring it on and go ahead, right? I never wanted my shoulders to droop in front of my children. So in some ways, they held me to the standard which I had set for myself, and that helped.
Okay. So, which means if this is the condition, everyday work that we take for granted with our hands and legs is something which becomes a challenge to you. And at such a time when just normal things that we all do with our eyes closed, when that becomes a challenge, what inside you propels you to find that joy, find the happiness, and what changed in Ramji's approach and attitude to life?
So I think one of the things, I didn't know the jargon at that point in time, it was mindfulness, I think, which helped me at that point in time. If I had to struggle to put on a button for 15 minutes, and I have had to do that several times, right? One button, I would just focus on the task at hand. I wouldn't let my mind go into the despair that was just waiting around the corner. I would just keep taking the button in my right hand, taking the lapel in the left hand, trying to match the button to the buttonhole, try to push it through. It would keep slipping out. I had to drop my hand because the biceps didn't have the strength to hold up my hand. Try again, try again, try again, try again, and finally succeed. And all the time, your mind should be just focused on the present, on what you're doing. Don't let your mind go into why did this happen, or the frustration, or the despair. The moment you do that, you're finished. There's nothing that can save you after that. So it's intense amount of concentration, being present. And that is one on one side. On the other side, just to spend time with loved ones and enjoy life. I used to tell wacky, crazy stories to my children every day. Yeah? I mean, so we had this every day. We would have dinner together. That is a absolute ritual which we didn't ever break. And there would be lots of things, funny things. We'll keep bantering and chatting and pulling each other's legs, all kinds of stuff. And I would tell stories, wacky, completely made up, cooked up, absurd stories to the children. All that actually kept my sanity intact.
Okay. And then what did you give back to life? What did you learn from life at that point of time? So your aspirational quality of climbing up the ladder was happening, and you were taking on additional responsibilities to be completely occupied and see where you can make a difference. But did it stay just with the corporate world, or did you start moving out to the real world?
Actually, I had a rather violent kick in the backside from fate at that point in time. And this is at the height of my illness. I could barely walk. I had a crutch and I couldn't see properly because, I had to have the steroids actually put some kind of a coating in the lens of the eye, so I couldn't see. Everything was going downwards. Annual medical bill of 20 lakhs. And then I was sacked from my job as director of operations for the company. And it took me 3 hours to recover from that shock, honestly. And I cried for some time. My wife and I spoke about it, and she was violently angry because of, she had seen me taking on so much of responsibility on my shoulders to do this job, and it was so unfair to get sacked. But after 3 hours, I started focusing on what can I do now. And I knew that I had some big strengths, which is I had held general managerial roles. I knew how to run a business. I'm pretty good as a communicator, influencing people, etc. So I reached out to startup companies and I got 2 jobs by the end of the day, even though those people knew my condition, that I could barely walk, all that. The other thing that I did after that was that I started focusing on how to find a permanent cure for myself. Again, I knew the buck stopped with me. My doctors didn't know everything, right? And they didn't have the urgency that I had to solve my problems. They're just treating me as any other patient and one more data point in their lives. For me, I am me, right? My life is there. And I have to take care of myself, for my kids, my wife, my family. So I went around looking for solutions, and I tried various things. I had tried yoga, I had tried Ayurveda, diet, all those kind of things. And then I found a solution in the US where the doctor was treating patients with autoimmune conditions with a clinical trial. It's an experimental treatment, and that treatment actually was to reset the entire body in a sense. So they would actually give chemo and a couple of other toxic medications to kill the entire immune system, this immune system which is totally out of whack, and then regenerate it using one's own stem cells. So they would have taken out the stem cells first, then kill the immune system, inject the stem cells back. It'll bring out a new immune system quickly. And the new immune system didn't have the memory problem of the previous one. So that actually helped me. I went for the treatment, even though the doctor did warn that there is a slight probability of mortality. But for me, I was a risk-taking guy. I would always look for, how do I push the boundary? How do I try something new, something different? If this is not working, there's no point continuing with this. You have to look for different things. So I went for that, and it sort of substantially reversed the condition. It took me 6 months to rebuild my muscles. I had a Excel sheet which I created with 180 days. Each date I put, and 27 exercises for each exercise. Went after each exercise each day. Ensure that I beat the target I kept for myself on each date. Every week the target would go up. Every week I would do more and beat every target. And at the end of 180 days, I was walking 6 kilometers, and I was able to climb up steps without holding the railings. I could pick up weights with my hands. So massive change happened. There were some muscles which I had lost forever, which I wouldn't gain back. But overall, it was a huge turnaround. And that's when I started thinking that I need to do something else with my life. First of all, luckily, my wife was working in Google, and we had then safety net. And safety net was actually in every way, my wife. She just took on the entire pressure on herself, whether it was looking after me, holding my hand literally through every day when I was walking, holding my hand through the tough situation, holding the family together, earning money for the family, and gave me the opportunity to figure out something that I wanted to do for myself without feeling the pressure of having to earn. So I took time. I started writing my first book from the hospital bed in Chicago. That book was, and I keep saying, I think it is because that chemo and all the rat and rabbit extract and etc., which they pumped into my body, was a bit like having an old monk rum neat multiple times a day. So
the spiritual side of you awoke.
Reawakened. And I wrote this book, which is a completely wacky science fiction for children. And it got published as a children's book, but there is humor in that for anybody from 9 to 99, right? It had references, wacky references to classic books, and it had wacky references to pop culture, all kinds of stuff. And anybody would find at least something which is extremely funny in that book.
And it's called?
It's called Oops, the Mighty Gurgle. So Oops is the name of a character who's a time-traveling, evolved pumpkin from the future who has come to save humanity from destruction. Because humanity is under attack by a planet full of green pigs who want to destroy humanity because we play Angry Birds and kill green pigs. So that is a whole story about. And it had some wacky characters, absurd things which happen, crazy names, all those kind of things. So it got published as a children's book, and I started being invited to schools to talk about it. Those were amazing moments for me. I would love interacting with children. I would draw so much of energy from them, and I would tell them the wackiest of things. And I've had 800 kids sitting in one room, packed like sardines in a hot summer, listening to me for one whole hour. And the only thing you could hear from that room was every 5 minutes, peals of laughter. Okay. So I had them transfixed and I could make them happy. And that was such a wonderful feeling. The more you yourself feel happy. That is the realization I had at that point in time, which was very powerful. And then I started, so many people had helped me during this entire thing. So I wanted to give back as much as I could. So I started helping so many people in terms of anybody who reached out to me with a disorder or a condition. I would try and help them out. I would at least give a shoulder to cry on, if nothing else. And I would actually spend quality time with people who are in difficulty. That is possibly the most important thing you can do for people who are in trouble, right? And you care for them and you be empathetic. And that helped in making me feel wonderful. So maybe in a way, these were all coping mechanisms to build happiness into myself. It worked. And today I call myself the happiest person I have met in my life.
I'm not surprised. But can you give us your definition of happiness?
Oh, wow. Okay. Happiness is being at peace with what you have. At the same time, being driven constantly to give more to people around you. Okay. And deriving peace of mind and calmness from that. And being optimistic about the future. Saying that the future is going to be awesome, life is awesome. I think that's basically, in my opinion, happiness.
Yeah. And I think that spirit that life is awesome never left you, immaterial of what life threw at you as a challenge. And yeah. So now for RamG, when you see all that happened and all the tags and names that came beside your name, as in the position you are holding, what does RamG describe himself as now? Who is RamG now? What all does he do?
So I think a few things about myself is I love people. I I reach out to people, I spend time with people, I help people, I take help from lots of people. And I realize that I am just one small cog in this wonderful network of life, right? And so that is one aspect about me, which is that I know that I'm part of a larger whole, and I need to add as much value as possible to as many people as possible in this life which has been given to me. This life is a fantastic gift, and we are each of us walking miracles, right? There's so much happening chemically to make us work. I'm a science guy, yeah? So if I sound spiritual, it is because there is a thin line between science and spirituality. So I consider myself a miracle, and I want to give back as much as possible to as many people as possible. So that's one. Number two is I'm a constant learner. I have curiosity to know and learn and make myself better so that I can add even more value. So the more I add value to myself, the more I can amplify it using the chemicals within me and then give larger amount to people around me. The other things about me are I like to have fun. I'm basically a very fun-loving guy, humorous, and that helps me create lots of friends. I'm as genuine as I can be. I don't have any hang-ups in life. I don't think of myself as somebody great. I'm just thinking of somebody who has got a lot of wonderful things who's happened to me. And because of that, I'm able to do certain things in life. And that really, I think the ability to be authentic and genuine to myself is something which makes me have lots more friends, actually. Helps me have a lot more friends. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And I'm a major family guy. I love to spend time with my wife and children and my mother, and so.
Okay,
Yeah.
and Ramji, with children around you, as in not your children, but little kids around you, who's that Ramji? Because your DP also has that, and that smile is such an authentic, beautiful, from the heart smile. So, do you do a lot of work with children?
Yeah, I became a child when I'm with them. I just completely go down to their level. If it is fifth grade kids, I'm at their level. If it is high school kids, I'm
And
at their level.
what work do you do with them? What do you do with them? Tell them stories, bring out their creativity. What do you do?
So I mean, I have done a lot of so-called science workshops using characters from my book,
Okay.
the first book, right? From Ouch to Oops. So while that is an absurd book, there are scientific nuggets in that. And I actually bring that out and tell them about science and things like that. Half of it is like lots of squealing and fun and stuff. And the other half is lots of interesting nuggets, which I tell them. That's one. I also deliver a lot of motivational talks to them. I mean, I want to see, I think one thing that drives me strongly is that I want to leave the world a better place for me having been born than otherwise. And so the way best to do that is to influence the next generation, try and mold them to become positive, wonderful human beings. And for that, I spend a lot of time to do that, actually. So with children, I do a lot of these talks where I try to ignite that passion in them. And because of that only, I actually also wrote my third book, which is Active Parenting. I really want children to grow up to their full potential. And there are ways in which parents can do that. And this has come through a lot of research that I have done. I, in fact, enrolled for diploma in child psychology. I learned a lot of stuff on positive psychology, interviewed a lot of people who are successful, understood what made them successful and what their parents did to make them successful. All that together is the book Active Parenting. And I want children to really be wonderful when they grow up. They should be the best versions of themselves.
True. So can I ask you a question now about parenting? Because you've been parented in a particular way, and then you became a parent and you had your own challenges that had to be encountered as well. So how, now when you look back, how has your parenting been different from your dad's or your mother's, your parents' parenting on you?
So at a very fundamental level, I think they are very similar, because the kind of values, when I say values, it's qualities, traits, all that attributes, all that included, that I wanted to inculcate in them, are, I think, very similar to what my parents would have wanted of me and what sort of helped me reach there. I had the added advantage that I was going through an incredibly tough time. And that helped me add a lot of dimensions to what I was telling them, which is real life situations they're observing on a day-to-day basis. And to be the best version of myself through all that, I think that helped them become a lot stronger maybe than I was at their age. I've seen that happening, right? I mean, so my daughter wanted to, from the grade 9, she wanted to be a doctor and she wanted to study in the UK. She did so many things to get us into that path. So after 10th grade or 11th grade, I think she went and stayed in this place called Sargur, which is at a tribal hospital with a very bare minimal kind of things. She did an internship there, understood what it takes to be a doctor. She got herself into the school council so that her CV can look good. Then she went through an interview process. She went through a test and her grades were like perfect, actually. In fact, she had perfect grades in 10th and almost perfect grade in 12th. And she applied with all that and she got called for interviews, which she had to go in person. And in the last second, when we applied for the visa, my wife and she went together for the visa, and one document was left out. My wife did not submit the document, because of which her visa got rejected, and she was supposed to go to UK in 7 days' time. And her entire life dream was just coming crashing down around her. And my wife was sitting there and blaming herself and crying. And what my daughter did was to console my wife and say, don't worry, there are other opportunities. We'll figure out what to do. And that's when I realized, my God, all the trouble I've gone through, difficulties I've gone through, it's actually having a positive impact, right? My son wanted to be a basketball player all his life, and he was hung upon getting into the state team, and he was working really hard for it. And at the age of 12, when he wanted to get into the junior state team, he had that major tournament coming up, etc. He developed a bone condition called Osgood-Schlatter, which actually made the doctor say that for the next 2 years, you should not play basketball. So his entire life dream was coming completely unstuck. He just sat there and cried for 5 minutes. Then he pulled himself up, and he just focused on playing guitar and singing, and completely turned around his life after that. Maybe whatever I was going through is really helping them.
Yeah, very, very true. So RamG, the last 2 years was a very different time for everybody in the world. Nobody expected that the world would take a step back and reflect so much. You have had a very different kind of a life where lots of moments of reflection helped you evolve into a better human being each time. How did the last 2 years treat you? And what did you see shift or alter in you?
So for me, last 2 years was actually just a logical extension of what I had set out to do earlier, which is to help as many people as possible, playing to my own strengths. And when the pandemic struck, I've been working in Azim Premji Foundation for the last 10 years, and I edit a science magazine for school teachers. And in fact, I founded the magazine with the help of a lot of wonderful scientists and teachers and stuff like that. When this happened, Azim Premji Foundation, which is usually only into education, they wanted to get into supporting healthcare space at that point in time, to help the most vulnerable sidelined population, right? I mean, people who are left out of all public support. And they wanted somebody to understand the pandemic, figure out about the spreading, the modeling of the mathematical modeling of that, understanding what causes it, what are the treatments, what are the kind of testing which is available, the whole science behind it, and also then gather all that information, network with people around, and then conduit that information into the organization. And I was perfect for that because I loved science. I loved to learn. I loved to network. I loved mathematics, and I had great influencing powers and communication skills. So all that together, I was pulled in as sort of lead for the healthcare strategy for the pandemic. And I was able to contribute so much in touching so many lives across the country because the foundation did some incredible work during that time. And I was sort of in the center of that and contributing substantially for that effort. So my target of touching 1 million lives positively sort of suddenly came to be because of that entire 2 years of pandemic. So that's one. Number two is, I also realized that these 2 years, I realized how much unequal the world is. There are people who are comfortable like us, sitting comfortably in apartments and getting our food delivered, this one, that one, completely isolated from the reality of half the population who are starving to death and who didn't have any ability to distance themselves socially because livelihood meant mixing around with people. So either you starve to death or you get COVID, right? And so that even deeper, it impressed me about how much I need to help in adding value to the rest of the world. So these were the two takes from pandemic for me, actually.
Okay, so you reached your target of reaching 1 million people and changing their lives positively, or
I suppose so, right? I mean, because of this pandemic and what the work I have done. See, even before that, my life story got published in 8th grade textbook of Macmillan as a chapter. So I have lots of kids who are reading my life story and feeling really positive and happy. And
Oh, they must be so happy to meet you then as a person who they read about and then see you live and interact with you. You must be like a real life hero for them.
The best thing is, I have kids from some small distant towns who Google my name and find out my contact and reach me and say that they have read about my life story in the textbook. It is so nice, yeah.
I know. I can actually see, as it is, you're so positive. And here is the person who they can actually call and say how much you've done. and hear the story.
I'm just a completely ordinary guy, right? I mean, absolutely ordinary guy who's the only thing I've done well in life is to just see how I can add value to people. That's all.
And value add you definitely have, Ramji. So as we move towards the end of this conversation, 3 life lessons that you'd like to leave us with.
I think the first one is that we really have no control over circumstances around us, right? World, I keep saying, is a bunch of random variables which happen one after the other. We really have no life control over what happens to circumstances, but we have absolute control over how we react to circumstances. And that's finally what makes us happy, sad, dejected, positive, whatever it is. So it's really within you, and the buck stops with you. That's number one. Number two is, and this is something I have learned actually more recently in the last 4 or 5 years. When I went through this difficult phase and I managed to conquer it in some sense mentally, I started thinking that why can't others do it? Everybody should be able to really control their lives and feel happy irrespective of what they're going through. And there was a bit of an arrogance in me that I have done it and why can't they do it, kind of thing. Today, I realize that every individual is absolutely unique. The chemicals in their body are very different from mine. I was very lucky that I've got some part of it which made me positive. Every person's journey is different. Their experiences are different. And as unique individuals, we are all equal, actually. And that is the second thing which helped me understand that I need to be empathetic towards everybody's situation. The third very important lesson is that we are all existing and prosperous because of so many people around us who are contributing to our well-being. People who are invisible sometimes to us, but who are constantly doing things which are day-to-day chores or livelihoods, making their livelihood, supporting us and ensuring that we have a great life. In fact, there are 39 trillion bacteria inside us, without which we will die. So we even owe it to the humble bacteria for our survival. All these together, we need to be deeply grateful to what we have as other human beings, other other organisms, whatever they are, for helping us tide over this life and making our life wonderful. So be grateful every moment of your life.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I am extremely grateful to the man who told me that your attitude decides your altitude in life. I've always believed in it. Today I'm meeting somebody who is a walking, talking proof of it. Love your authenticity and the ability with which you've seen life and you narrate your stories. Thank you so much, Ramji, for giving your time and sharing your story on You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rashmi. Such a wonderful chat we had. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Bye.
With that, we come to the end of this weekly quest of You and I with Rashmi Shetty. Do let us know if you know people who make the world beautiful. Write in to rashmi.thethirdeye@gmail.com. That is rashmi.thhirdeye@gmail.com. Come, let's explore this amazing world together, both you and I.